time for Kids Moment with Hannah! Hey guys, so glad you tuned in for another week of Kids Moment at BCC. Well, we are going to get started with our next part of God's big story. But to start us off today, I have a question for you. Have you ever thought you knew something really well and then you found out you didn't? For example, have you ever thought you knew the rules to a game and then you started playing the game and you thought you knew everything about it until all of a sudden you realized, I don't know how to play this game at all? Well, that idea of thinking we know something and then turns out maybe the answer is a little different is a big part of our story today that we're going to learn about. But this next part of the story, I'm actually going to need your help to tell it. At specific times in our story, I'm going to hold up signs like, and I need you to do what it says, okay? So if you didn't laugh yet, laugh now. Let's try another. And finally, okay, let's begin. We pick up the story where we left last week. Mary Magdalene ran back to where the disciples were, telling them that Jesus was not at the tomb. Peter and John got so stoked about this that they booked it back to the tomb. And you know what all they saw? Strips of linen in the tomb. The stone was rolled away. And they were like, whoa, what has happened? We just saw this guy die, and now he's not even here. Where did he go? Well, at this same time, there was two people walking from Jerusalem to Emmaus. Maybe they were running. As they walked, the men talked about everything that they had heard happened. They had heard how Jesus had been arrested, how he had died on the cross, and now they were hearing rumors that Jesus had come back to life. And they just wondered, could all this actually be true? Now, get this, as the two people walked and talked, Jesus came up and walked beside them.
Oh, hey guys, can I power walk with you?
But Jesus kept the two men from knowing it was him.
Say what?
Jesus asked them,
What you talking about on your way to Emmaus?
Are you the only person in Jerusalem who doesn't know? Don't you know about the things that have happened here the last few days?
What things?
Have you been living under a rock the past few weeks?
Cleopas and his friends were shocked that this stranger had no idea of the events of the last couple of days.
About Jesus of Nazareth.
He was a prophet. He was powerful in what he said and did in the sight of God and all the people. The chief priests and our rulers handed Jesus over to be sentenced to death. They nailed him to a cross.
But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to set Israel free. Also, it is the third day since all this happened. Some of our women amazed us too. Early this morning, they went to the tomb.
But they didn't find his body. So they came and told us what they had seen. They saw angels who said Jesus was alive. Then some of our friends went to the tomb. They saw it was empty, just as the women had said. They didn't see Jesus' body there.
As you can see, this was pretty wild. Cleopas and his friend were going on and on about Jesus and all the things that had happened, and they didn't realize they were actually talking to Jesus. Finally, Jesus spoke up.
How foolish you are. How long it takes you to believe all that the prophets have said. Didn't the Messiah have to suffer these things and then receive his glory?
Jesus went on to tell them about God's master plan from the very beginning. He went back to Adam and Eve and Moses and the Exodus and so many more stories and laid it out how God had planned this. He reminded them of words from prophets that were spoken long ago, how Jesus was to be born, to teach, to die, and to rise again. He was trying to help them understand that Jesus was the promised one from years ago that was now here to save people and show them how great his love was. Finally, the two people were just enthralled with what Jesus was saying, and they wanted to hear more. So they finally arrived at Emmaus where they were going, and they invited Jesus to come stay with them. Jesus agreed. Finally, they go into the home. They sit down for an evening meal, And Jesus takes the bread, gave thanks, and broke it. He started to give it to them. Immediately, the two people realized it was Jesus. But as soon as they recognized it was him, he disappeared in front of their eyes. But then it all started to make sense. No wonder this man was able to explain the scriptures and what was foretold. They got up at once and began their journey back to Jerusalem. Once they got there, they told the other disciples all that had happened. That's probably what it sounded like, a confused mess of a story. People talking over one another, another person talking over another. They were so excited. Jesus was alive. So the disciples were finally starting to understand how much bigger this story was than they had ever realized. That what they had witnessed would be the biggest thing that had ever happened in history. Do you remember at the beginning of our story when I asked you if there was ever a time you thought you knew something and then you realized after that you didn't, and it could kindly feel a little embarrassing? Well, the Bible's kind of that way sometimes. You see, this book, in case you haven't noticed, is huge. And here's the thing, we might never understand everything there is to know about God, but that's okay. It's not embarrassing. It's actually really cool because that means we get to learn something new all the time. So it's kind of like eating ice cream. Just like we can't eat all the ice cream in the entire world all at once, the best part about eating ice cream is eating a little bit at a time and savoring each bite. Learning about God can be that way. We don't know everything all at once, but instead we get to savor each bit of new information we learn about Him. So the key is to take the time to learn. Don't give up or think you know everything. Stay humble and just make it your goal to learn something new each and every day. Even though we don't know everything about God's plan, we do know one thing. That event we just celebrated last weekend, the story of Easter, Jesus' death and resurrection, is by far the most incredible thing that has ever happened. And it can change your life in the most amazing ways. That's what I want for each of you. I hope that you can encounter this Jesus like these disciples did. 2 questions for you this week. How can you set aside time this week to learn more about God? Maybe you can ask your parents or another adult something about God that maybe they don't even know the answer to, and then you can learn about it together. And the other question for this week, have you ever learned something about God that surprised you? Take a moment and share that thought with someone sitting next to you, or maybe text someone or call someone, and it might inspire them to learn something new about God too. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I cannot wait till I get to see you next. Have a great week.